Actually, I do feel.
Hi, Jared. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for the invitation.
Now, most of my peeps should see your face and be very familiar with you, but in case we've got someone maybe new, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name's Jared. I'm from Utah. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a registered play therapy supervisor. Um, and this year, I'm going to be the vice president of the UAPT. I'm really excited about that.
That's super exciting. They're lucky to have you.
Thank you.
I love that. So, we're chatting today because you're coming back to do a training for the academy, and specifically, you're talking about Wicked and tying that through a Jungian lens.
Yep.
So, before we dive too much into you sharing about the training, I'm assuming you've seen Wicked 1 and Wicked 2.
And this actually, I didn't even have to wait for Wicked 2 because like during Wicked 1, I'm like, this is going to have to be a presentation. It's so like perfectly set up for it.
What was it that stuck out the most?
Um, it has to be the last like 20, 30 minutes of part one that just
Okay.
grabbed. I mean, the music's powerful, the acting's beautiful. It's just the whole thing brings the story together. Um, but I think it's the thing that said I have to do a presentation about this was not the music because I don't sing, not going to happen, but the seeing the roles play out between Elphaba both Alphabet and Glinda having their persona that they had to show that they believed they had to show, and then seeing a real integration and a person really becoming themselves, so profound. And you don't get to see it like that on screen very often. And it's done so beautifully that I thought, yeah, I definitely want to bring this into a presentation.
I love that. And we are going to be full of spoilers while we chat. So if you have not watched or seen Wicked 1 or 2, don't listen anymore. You need to stop and come back after you have. Um,
It is
did
true.
you did you see or read Wicked before the movie adaptations? I'm just
I
curious.
neither. So I actually read it afterwards
Okay.
because I couldn't
Oh,
wait for part two. So I went and got the book. Big departures from movie.
huge. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
still, very interesting. But yeah, I had listened to some of the music before, but I didn't know much about the story.
I love that. I love that. That's very
I
fun.
was
So
really, really unsure.
you are, at least for me, you are my kind of go-to with the Jungian lens. You don't have to like own that, but that is what I've put on for you. Where did you first get drawn into Jungian play therapy, and what has made it stick to me? And like, this is my lens.
So, um, we'll talk more about synchronicity like in the training. I'll give a really quick definition for people who don't know what a synchronicity is or a synchronistic event, but it's a an event that like you don't plan, but it has a really profound meaning for you. And it was a synchronistic event for me that started me on all of this. So I decided I wanted to work on becoming a registered play therapist. Had taken zero trainings whatsoever. I had read the book when I was in my internship, but had not been to a single training. And my supervisor said, "Well, we'll pay for you to go to the national conference if you want." Yes, I want. So I, was reading through the courses that were available, and I chose. There was one about Jungian play therapy, and I thought, well, that sounds really interesting. I've never heard of that before. I'll take it among all the other courses. And it just happened to be that the person who was presenting that was JP Lilly, who became my play therapy supervisor, and he was practicing in the town right next to the town where I was practicing. So it just clicked, um,
Yeah.
just like that. And as I was working with him, I realized that the symbolic nature, the heavy focus on symbolism in Jungian was something that worked really, really well for me.
I love that. I love that. When you, in your practice, are you practicing mostly with children, teens, adults?
It's about 50-50 between children and teens and then adults. So about
Okay.
50-50.
one of my missions is to also make sure that people know that play therapy is not just for kids. So I love
Mhm.
being able to ask that and kind of see how that all fits. Um, when you were creating this wicked Jungian training, what kinds of kids did you have in mind, or even
Mm.
adults, and how do they show up in the therapy room?
So most of what I imagine is I am the immediate audience, right? Like I thought of like, oh, this is something that would work really well for me. And then as I continue to build that out, there's a few things that I focus on a lot in my practice. Neurodivergence, I see a lot of neurodivergent people, and um, I don't think I'm alone in seeing some like neurodivergent coding in Wicked. I think it's
Yes, you're not
pretty
alone in
clear.
that.
I also think that Wicked is such a perfect screen to project onto, so people can see,
Mhm.
like they look at Alphabet and they think, "Oh, that's me because of this," or "It's that's me because of that." So I think
Yeah.
that Wicked is perfect for that. So I projected that onto it. But I also work with a lot of kids who have selective mutism and perfectionism. They're very afraid to make mistakes, to let the mask slip, or to show up in a way that they're not expecting.
Yeah.
I see them a lot in that as well.
I love that. I love that. Um, so w can you share maybe just this? We're not giving the whole training away, but one of the big pieces that people identify as Jungian is the shadow. Do you have like a real quick description or definition of what that might be?
Yeah, my so this is a Jared definition. Our shadow is any part of ourself that we abandon, that we decide is not consciously, but we decide, oh, this isn't good to have. It could come from anything, from a person saying, oh, like we don't behave like this, boys don't cry, things like that. Any
Mm.
part of us that we reject, that we don't live, it is our unlived, abandoned parts.
Yeah. I I am seeing how that threads really nicely into the characters and story of Wicked. There's a lot of abandoning parts of self, and then reclaiming or not reclaiming them later on.
And we get to see what the consequences of those things are,
Yeah.
whether we reclaim or we don't reclaim.
When so shadow work, if you're on that side of TikTok, was a very popular thing that was going around. There's like journals around it now, and you can do your own shadow work. What does shadow work look like in play therapy?
It can look like a lot of different things. What you're probably going to see is repetitive play, um, where a kid is bringing the same kind of energy into the play. You might see things that are, forbidden. Things could be buried. Things could be coming up to the surface, and it's quite possible that the thing that they're playing with is like a bad toy. Like it could be a predator, or it could be a thing that they don't like very much. One of the things that JP gave me, one of the toys that he gave me before he passed away, was this really large scorpion. And it creeps out a lot of kids, but it tends to be the thing that they get to act out their quote unquote bad parts.
Yeah, I love that. Would you say it's typically like creepy or weird or bad things that are used?
It often is, but it's not always. So
Yeah.
there's actually,
Okay.
I don't want to go too deep into this one. There's also something called the golden shadow, and that's the parts of ourselves that we don't believe we have, but we recognize like the great qualities of other people. We can't
Mm,
recognize those great qualities unless we have them ourselves. So that's another part of our shadow. So sometimes the shadow that is played out is actually those like really quote unquote positive traits. The things that a person is like, oh, I just couldn't have those.
yeah. Is there, when you talk about the shadow or the golden shadow, are there characters that come to mind for you from Wicked?
Oh, I hadn't considered that. That's a really good question. Um, well, for the shadow, I definitely think of two. Alphabet certainly has her own shadow. Um,
Yes.
her arc plays out really well. You can see what happens, especially as she begins to reclaim hers. We have
Yeah.
another person with a shadow who does not do a very good job of reclaiming his, and that would be the wizard, who, he's got this big, giant projected mask, and
Hmm.
he stays behind that because he has all of these parts of himself that he's rejecting and not owning.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, he has legitimately a large mask of his face that he uses.
Yeah,
Would so one of the things I was thinking of is Glinda is I think often really misunderstood in a maybe an initial viewing or if you just see the pink and the green.
yeah,
I feel like she often wears like maybe like a shiny mask or like this perfect persona mask.
yeah. And I think a lot of people can identify with Elphaba really easily because they felt like outcast, they felt pushed off, but we don't so easily see the masks that we wear because the masks that we
Mm.
wear are useful to us. We have to do it, right? Like it's part of society. And actually the persona, the mask is not a problem until we forget that the mask is a mask and not our
Mm.
face. That is what happened with the Wizard of Oz. Like that projection, that fake part of
Yeah,
him became him. And
became
then you have
him.
this inner battle with Glinda. With like, am I the mask? Am I going to let go of the mask? How does that play out?
Yeah.
But she lives in fear of what if I'm not perfect?
Yeah, and what a message that a lot of our clients, I think, have struggled with and maybe not see it that way. I think that's one
Yeah.
of the things about pop culture that I am always drawn to is it makes it so much easier for us to talk about and to see when we get to see it on a big screen like that.
And watching Wicked on the big screen, just like you're talking about, plays out very similarly to play therapy, where it gives us that psychological distance where we're like, this is not me. But for some reason, I'm having a big emotional response to this. I don't know why. This is somebody
Yeah.
else. It's because we get to project those really powerful parts of ourselves that we often forget about or ignore um, onto something very real. And then those parts are like finally feeling heard and seen, and that brings emotion with it.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where the magic of play therapy resides, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you wish maybe every parent or clinician understood about this idea of shadow integration? Because that gets kind of buzzwordy. But speaking to parents or clinicians, what would you like them to know?
I think two things. First off, it's not bad. It's not scary. Your shadow is not like embracing your shadow, integrating your shadow is not going to turn you into a horrible person. Those parts of you already exist, and acknowledging that they're there, it's just making you a more complete person. So,
Mm.
one example that I use is you might notice that I'm bald, right? I could,
What?
if I wanted to, I know, surprise. If I wanted to, I could grow out like a comb over or something, right? Like try to try to cover it up. Or I can say, look, this is me. This is my head. This is what I have here, and I'm okay to accept this head. Um, that is integration. This is the other part of it that's I think really important. Parents think, sometimes think, um, okay, so we do that, and then the behaviors get better. Maybe sometimes behaviors tend to soften when all parts are honored and seen and integrated. Integration, individuation, lifelong process. It doesn't happen over, whatever course of weeks or months the person's in therapy. But we can help those parts be seen and honored and like, begin the integration process. When that happens, yeah, oftentimes behavior soften, but realistically, the person becomes a more whole person, not a better behaved person necessarily.
Yeah, well, and I think that that's a good note to remind that we don't offer play therapy to fix kids' behaviors. That's not an
Yeah.
actual goal of ours.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And I think,
true in many theories, but also obviously in
right.
the Jungian theory.
And I get it as a parent, right? As a, parent of two, would love my children to like to go in and express themselves and come out and just work really easily with me. But more than that, I want them to leave my home being more fully themselves.
Yeah,
So that's my goal with play therapy.
I love that. Do we have a minute to talk about the idea of the persona and Glinda from Wicked?
Yeah. So we
Yeah.
talked about the wizard's persona, the
Yeah.
big giant mask. So a persona, by the way, comes from like the ancient masks that actors would wear. So it's a mask, just like we were talking about. Her mask is pink and perfect and popular. All these P words, how nice. Um, but who she really is something different altogether. And I know you said we were going to give spoilers, but I'm going to not give a spoiler on this one,
Okay.
um, because she doesn't integrate her shadow the way Elphaba does. And so her story doesn't end the way Elphaba's stories ends. It doesn't go the way Elphaba's goes.
Also, an important message because not everyone's story is going to go the same way, even if they're working on the same thing with the same therapist. Can we say
Right.
that?
Absolutely. There's so many factors involved. We we didn't even get into the idea of like the Jungian concept of complexes, but like the same behavior might be driven by a different complex. So while both of them had some of like these similar things that they were working on, the way it played out it was first off, it was driven by different things, and then because it was driven by different things and approached in different ways, their stories go different directions. Also, it really helps for
Yeah.
the plot.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, the stories would be very boring if they all ended the same.
Right.
Yeah. All right, so just a couple more then. And then I know you're super busy and this is play therapy week. So can we I love the ideas of symbols. I know you and I both use sand tray techniques. What is it about that sand play or about the symbolic play? It doesn't have to be in sand, but we sand like symbolic is really easy to see in sand.
Yeah.
What is it about that that allows people, children too, but not just kids. I mean, I do sand with all ages, that allows them to express maybe those shadow parts, those unwanted parts or quote unquote bad parts.
Right. It's a lot like we talked about with watching the movie. It's safety because it's this isn't me. This is an object that I can imbue with certain ideas and symbols and behaviors and traits, but it's not actually me. That gives me the ability to express something that needs to be expressed, but without owning it. And then I can play with it and I can look at it and I can grow it and I can shrink it and I can move it, but it's not part of me until I'm ready to say, yeah, that's me. the
Mm.
that the safety and that distance allows the child to really experiment. And experimentation is where we see the magic happen.
Yeah, well, and it's so important because I think there's so many messages being given on who we're supposed to be from a very young age.
Yeah.
I think those that don't see kids or treat kids in a mental health capacity might not recognize that at very young ages they are carrying around messages and personas given to them by others in
Mhm.
their life.
Absolutely. And personas including family roles and like even simple questions like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? You would be a really good banker, a really good soldier, a really good whatever.
Yes.
We do it accidentally and we do it easily.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can go all the way down to did you have pink or blue? Did
Mm,
you get dolls or dinosaurs?
yeah.
Right? Like it goes all the way down, all the way
Yep.
down. So, what are some signs that maybe integration or owning those shadow pieces might be happening in Jungian play therapy?
Um, so I'm of the opinion that individuation is so it is a this isn't my opinion, sorry. In Jungian perspective, individuation is a lifelong process. I am of the opinion that it really does begin in childhood. And it starts from the first time that we learn to say no and we begin to separate ourselves from our parents. But that real integration portion is more methodical and it's um, more psychically and energetically powerful than just no. So some signs that that is happening is when we start to see the union of opposites, right? So that the child is maybe presenting one way, but this character that they're playing or this toys that they're playing with is presenting in a very different way. Or when, they're having whatever play that they're having, and you're seeing very big opposites play out. And when they allow that to happen, those opposites to sit, and they don't judge it, they don't end it, they don't, terminate the conflict too quickly, that's when we can really see that transcendent function happening. And it's in that union of opposites that we really grow and stretch ourselves. So that would be the first place that I would look. Other places that a person could look is a child is able to be a little bit more authentic and feel a little less um, attached to the mask.
Mm.
That mask is again, it's necessary. We all have personas. We like it's important for us to have them. Um, but we can see individuation happening. We can see integration happening when the mask stops being so important. It's part of a uniform, not part of the face.
I love that. I love that. And going back to using like Wicked as a lens, like having someone say, well, I'm a little bit Glinda and a little bit
Hmm.
Elphaba and a little bit the Scarecrow or whoever
Yeah.
else they want to add on. I love that. So I have you online April 3rd, I believe.
Right. Yep.
Do you want to give a little snippet of like, you should come and listen to me because
So I'm going to flip that just a little bit. Like, come be with all of us, but really, like, you're going to listen to me, of course, right? Like, I got the microphone. You're really going to be listening to yourself, and that's yourself with a capital S. Not only are we going to talk about some of these things, we are going to have some time to do experiential listening to self. We're going to explore our masks a little bit. Um, if we're brave enough, we might explore our shadow a little bit, and we're going to learn to love all of those parts of ourselves, and not just the ones that are like pink and pretty and popular, but the parts that are green and the parts that um, are powerful and shady and wizard like. That's the goal, to listen to the whole self.
I love that. Now, easy plug, if you're a Wicked fan, you should come. Do you have to have seen Wicked to come?
I highly recommend it, but no, everything that we talk about will be explained. You will be getting spoilers. If you haven't seen it, you'll get some spoilers. So if you can't handle that, please go watch it. Plus, it's also great
So
entertainment.
good. Yes, yes. Although, according to my daughter, part one is better than part two. I can't really argue with that in terms of like
I
the
agree.
music and theatrics and drama. So, but yeah, give yourself the gift of watching Wicked and then come back and hang out with us. Jared,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye.